Assalamu alaikum, everyone. Welcome. I see people coming in fast and furious. Alhamdulillah. MashaAllah. Great to see everyone. Inshallah. The chat is turned on. Q&A is working, hopefully. Bismillah. Let's see, who's here that I recognize? Amir Fadli, mashallah. And I know anyone else? Muhammad Zaki, I believe I know him. And mashallah, so many new names, new faces. This is why this is so exciting. Mashallah, the ummah is so wide, and it's really great to connect with lots of new people. Welcome everyone. I appreciate everyone coming today. Inshallah, I was just with Dina in another meeting, so she should be coming over here as well. She's the other presenter. But alhamdulillah, very happy to have you. I'm here in my home office, and this is not a Zoom background. These are actual books back here, like real touchable, usable books. So alhamdulillah, that's what we're here to learn more about, how to hit the books and so on. Let me start sharing my screen. Bismillah. Let's go here. And alhamdulillah. So this is our topic for today, inshallah. And there is Dina, our co-host for today. Welcome, Dina. Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum salam.
So alhamdulillah, we have 36 people. We had something when I last checked, 120 people signed up. So hopefully, people will keep on filtering in. But we have a lot to get through today, so I think we're just gonna jump right on in. So Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Rabbi shrah li sadri wa yassir li amri wahlul 'uqdatan min lisani yafqahu qawli. Welcome everyone to this 5 Before College webinar. I know I've seen some of you before in earlier webinars, and I'm sure we have some new people as well. So the topic today is how top colleges evaluate applications, 5 ways to improve your chances of getting in, and why supplements are key. So those are the things we're really going to try to cover. How it all works, how do colleges make these decisions, and then what are 5 things you can do in particular to help your chances of getting in. And I always like to start with a conscious Bismillah, especially during this time, where our energy and our focus is understandably probably not on a topic like the one we're covering today, when our brothers and sisters in Palestine and Gaza are going through such a difficult time. It's important to recenter and remember that we're doing this all for the sake of Allah. And I'm going to speak briefly about Gaza in a moment. So Bismillah. So just to give a little background about us for the people who are new, my name is Hamzah Henshaw, and alhamdulillah, I became Muslim way back in 1994 at the age of 15 here in Massachusetts, where I live now. I went on to graduate from Harvard in the year 2001 with a degree in NELC, which stands for Near Eastern Languages and Civilizations. We might talk about that a little bit later. But after a brief career in Islamic finance, I switched over to education, and I have more than 20 years of experience as an educator, taught sort of all over the world, taught in private schools, taught in Islamic schools. And so for the last 11 years now, I've been working at Al-Noor Academy in Mansfield, Mass., which is one of the most established and successful Islamic schools really in the country. And one of the things we're well known for is placing many of our graduates in the country's top colleges. So Dina herself is one of our graduates. We'll see her slide on the next page. She's an MIT grad, but we have, mashallah, students who have gone to pretty much all of the best schools in the country, and which I think is pretty impressive for a school with a very small budget and low profile, small graduating classes, etc. A few other things about me. I write a newsletter on Substack called 5 Before 5 that Hamzah is growing and growing every week, which is exciting. And I founded this company, 5 Before College, this year, back in May, I believe. And our goal is to help Muslims maximize the return on investment of their college investment in this world and the next. So how we can help this whole process of getting ready for college and going through high school give us hasanat, both in dunya, obviously, because it helps us get into these top schools, but also more importantly in the akhirah as well. I will let Dina introduce herself.
Assalamu alaikum. I am Dina. As Brother Hamzah mentioned, I was one of his students and went to An-Nur Academy. I graduated in 2018. Where I then went on to study at MIT. I got my bachelor's in math and in computer science, economics, and data science. And then I just this June finished my master's in computer science, economics, and data science. I was involved with the Muslim community at MIT and was president of the Muslim Student Association for one of those years in 2021. I was also on the fencing team when I was at MIT, and I recently joined the team at 5 Before College, and I'm very excited about that. Alhamdulillah.
Yes, Dina was our first hire. You might see that I just turned on a poll because we talked about ourselves. In this webinar format, it's hard to actually hear from you guys. But if you are able to click into this and let us know whether you're a student or a parent, and then what grade you are in and what kind of school you go to. And I'll give you another maybe 15 seconds or so. We have 31 people have answered, 64%. That's pretty good participation. Another little bit of time, and I think I'll be able to display this for everyone, I hope. You're seeing a very even split on students and parents. Let's see. Almost done. Okay, it's been a minute. I think we've got things. Let's see. Share results. All right. So we have almost 50-50 with students and parents, a little bit a few more parents. So that's always great. It's one of the things that's really not surprised me, but it makes me really happy to see students taking charge, because that they really do need to be running the ship here. Here we have the different grades. Mashallah, lots of 9th graders. Very impressive. So we have some seniors. Actually, not as many seniors. I was probably hoping or expecting this might bring some more, but maybe more will come. And then a lot of public school, some Islamic school, a couple private school, and one homeschooler, mashallah. Very cool. Okay, as I said, I did want to start before we get into all the college stuff. I get a lot of questions, obviously, during this horrific time about what teenagers can do, and who are feeling helpless during this time. So I just wanted to share a few thoughts on that. So I think there's two things. There's the effort of the day and the effort of the night. So for the effort of the day, that's really, what we really need to do is educate ourselves, right? This, I think emotion runs extremely high during times like this, and all the images that we're seeing are just heart-wrenching, but we can also get desensitized to it. And also there's a lot of misinformation that's being spread, and people get very emotional when they talk about things. If we really want to change things, we need to first and foremost educate ourselves. right? And we need to learn the history and be able to have a strong conversation. There's no doubt about who the oppressors are in the situation and who are the oppressed. And it's crystal clear, but we need to be in charge, in command of the facts when we're having these discussions, and not let our emotions get the best of us. So if we're in a school setting, it's difficult, but if there's ever a time to use our voice, it's now. And the other thing is just we should try to excel in school. Like going, one of the reasons that I'm still holding a webinar and still doing this work is because helping students get into the top colleges in the country, and college in general, is the way to change the system, to fix this broken system, right? When I look at what my Harvard classmates have accomplished with their lives and the positions that they have, there's no doubt that having strong educational credentials opens up doors for you where you can have genuine influence. And so that's how I see this mission as being very central to this effort of advocating for the sake of our brothers and so on. The other thing is educate others, right? So we can attend protests. I know, Dina, you were at the protest in DC just last week, right?
Yeah.
How was that experience?
It was very, alhamdulillah, like unexpected, the size of the turnout. It was like more people than I've ever seen in one place at any time. And I'm very happy to see the number of people who like were dedicated and traveled. And I hope inshallah that it has an impact.
Inshallah. So other things that we can do, obviously letters to Congress, op-eds, right? There's something different when the voice of a teenager or a younger person. Noor Kids did this amazing video of kids, really young kids, speaking out against what's going on in Gaza. But when a high school kid writes a letter to the editor of their local newspaper, those words carry power, right? From where you are. And so you should leverage that youth voice. And just to give an example of this, this is a story, I think back in 2015. So there was a boy here from the Sharing community, which I know if we have local people here would know him, Ahmed. He lost many family members in the war in Syria. And he also lost both of his arms because of an explosion. And so he wanted to write a letter to President Obama. Obviously he was not able to write it out himself. So what we did at school, we had a handwriting contest. We said whoever has the best handwriting will get a chance to write Ahmed's letter and send it to the president. And so one of our students, mashallah, this boy had beautiful handwriting. That's the letter itself. So that was sent to Barack Obama. And somehow Congressman Seth Moulton picked up on it. He's actually a classmate of mine from Harvard. He was in the same year as me. And he was amazed by Ahmed's story and actually invited him, and he was a guest for the State of the Union that year. And it got national press. So this is an example of just from our tiny little Islamic school, having an impact by using our voice and so on. And then, of course, there's the effort of the night, right? So it's critically important, Inna Allah la yughayyiru ma biqawmin hatta yughayyiru ma bi anfusihim, that this conflict should make us turn back to ourselves and turn towards Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And the best time for that is in tahajjud and making dua and asking Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. When we feel helpless, we should go to the one who can help. So I just wanted to start with that because I don't feel like I could talk about everything else we're going to talk about today without having that preface. So now we're going to transition into the main topic. It's just helpful because I can't see anyone's faces other than Dina's. It's difficult to speak to an audience of one. So if something resonates with you, that either of us are saying, please just put some exclamation points in the chat. Or, I think there's a way to send emojis up. Can someone see if they can send emoji? Yep, I'm seeing some thumbs up. Beautiful. So that's digital love. I love the heart. Ooh, look at that. Mashallah. So yeah, the emojis might work even better. Ooh, that's great, because when we were on Zoom, teaching on Zoom, I could never find out whether my jokes were landing with people. And this was a really helpful thing. In terms of questions, I see someone just put their hand up. What you should do is, okay, I'm not being funny now, so let's not go overboard with the emojis. Type your questions into the Q&A as they pop up in your head. Maybe at the end, when we're in the full Q&A, we can let you guys speak as well. But for now, as things come up, put them in the Q&A as opposed to the chat. The chat's more for I can't hear you, your slides aren't showing those exclamation points, but the questions put in the Q&A, and then you can upvote questions as well. And Dina or I will be looking in on the questions, and some of them might be more time sensitive, and we'll answer. Okay.
Just to explain the upvoting thing, so you guys can see the Q&A tab, and if you look at the pictures, you can give it a thumbs up. So we'll try to prioritize questions that have more thumbs up.
Right. Well, so for example, it's already happened. Can a student's participation in this political moment negatively impact their application process? Right. That's a great question. I would, in my personal opinion, I don't think so. Obviously, it depends what they say, what their involvement is, but more general advocacy, I think it's bigger than college, right? It's something that if they're doing it from something deep within their heart, then ultimately, inshallah, that will open up the right doors. If there's a college out there that's going to reject you because you advocated for children who are being killed and what many would consider a genocide, then that, alhamdulillah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala closed a door for you that you probably didn't want to go through in the first place. But I also think, because it's such a huge movement, because there's so much dissent and so many voices, it's okay. Obviously, talking about politics, talking about those big taboo issues in applications can be a risk. I probably wouldn't recommend it unless it's really, really very central to your identity and all that you stand for. But it can be it's a great question, inshallah. Okay. So 5 ways to improve your chances. This is the overview of the whole thing that we're doing. So start with intention, control what you can control, learn what happens behind the scenes, understand institutional priorities and what that means, and then knock your supplements out of the park. So that is where we are going next. So we're going to start with intention. So as we know, the first hadith in Imam Nawawi, and one of the very first hadith that every Muslim is taught, إِنَّمَا الْأَعْمَالُ بِالنِّيَّاتِ, we have to start with our intention. So, and this isn't just an idle thing that I'm saying. We really need to ask ourselves, what is it that makes us come to a webinar like this? And when people talk about the Ivy League, or they talk about these great schools, why do we want to go to those places, right? Is it because of status? Is it because of our egos? Is it an effort to amass lots and lots of wealth? It's possible, right? But those are not very high levels of intentions. We really need to examine this. So there's a hierarchy of intention, right? And all of these things are permissible. There's nothing haram on this, right? But you'll see that for many people, and certainly non-Muslims, right, they're at the bottom of that. They're going to college because of the financial and worldly gains that they can get from it, right? They want to go to a top college because they're the ego and status and honor and fame that they might get from it, right? They're looking for that, feel good factor. They'll feel good about themselves, right? But those top three are much higher, and that can also be part of your journey to college, right? That you're going there to try to find spiritual contentment, right? Dina, mashallah, was the president of the MIT MSA for years and years, and I'm sure that had a dramatic impact on your life, and that you were able to help so many other people, right? We're going there to seek paradise, right? This is the whole purpose of why we were created, right? To try to seek paradise. And even higher than paradise, higher than Jannah, is the Rida Allah, the pleasure of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, right? So when you reframe the college application process, right, and the high school experience along this hierarchy of attentions, it changes everything, right? It changes our whole reason for being. It's why I started this company, and why I feel like this is a voice, and these are things that people need to hear. All right. Other things that are important to keep in mind: where you go to college is not who you'll be. Okay. It's as much as people fixate on this and talk about it, right? The specific college that you go to is not going to determine who you are. You're not going to be asked about your GPA or where you went to college, your alma mater, on the day of judgment. I like to talk about this concept of chasing the shadow of college. What most people are doing is there's this college thing, and they're going after it, and they have all their intention to just get into college, right? And it's like chasing your shadow, right? When you chase your shadow, right, if you do it in the playground, the shadow is always one step in front of you, right? The shadow is always walking in front of you. The way to actually get your shadow to follow you is to turn away from it. Stop chasing your shadow and go towards the source of the light, right? If you go towards the source of the light, which is An-Nur Samawat, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, right, then the shadow follows along behind you obediently. If you really make your intention to please Allah, you're studying hard and you're working hard and you're doing all your extracurriculars and you're building your character for the sake of the pleasure of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, then the colleges are going to be chasing after you. They're going to be that shadow following after you. So again, changing this is, I don't know if the crying emoji is, if this is humorous,
It's
but
like laughing.
laughing. Okay. Yeah. Okay. Anyway, there are lots of ways to stand out without burning out. We should focus on eulogy virtues over resume virtues, right? Eulogy virtues are things they talk about at your funeral, right? Your honesty, your compassion, those sorts of things. Whereas resume virtues are the things that get put on a resume, your skills and those things. I wrote a whole Substack about this, and inshallah we can share these slides and so on. That's a clickable link. But overcoming our educational elitism, because I think this is something plaguing the Muslim community. This is not to say, with all this said, like, I went to Harvard, Dina went to MIT, I've helped many students get into those types of schools, and if that's where your interests are and that's where your aptitude lies, and you're a very strong student, mashallah, by all means, go for it. There's nothing wrong with it. And mashallah, we need Muslims in those halls of power, like I said in the beginning, right? So, but there's a happy medium here. Don't make, elitism your primary need. Do you want to say anything about this, Dina?
I mean, yeah, like as you mentioned, it is hard to say like, oh, you don't have to go to a top college from the position of two people who, alhamdulillah, did. But I think it's important to just note that there are so many different paths to success, even like exclusively worldly success. So like, while it is true, yes, where you go to college and what you do in your career are not who you are and what you're going to be asked about on the day of judgment, it's also true even in like a smaller more like dunya focused sense, that any career that you want to have, like any like worldly aspiration that you want to get, there are multiple paths there, and there's no job that I know of that requires you to have gone to a specific college for you to have that job. And so if things don't work out in the way that you want them to at this level, there are so many different ways for you to prove yourself, to excel in the university that you go to. And like, there's just so many different paths that lead to success.
Mashallah. All right, just a few statistics. So a lot of people think, when they think of college, they're thinking of like those top 20 schools, those Ivies in Stanford and, the really fancy schools. 75% of the Common App schools have acceptance rates over 50%, right? I think there are 2,800 schools in the country roughly, and only 60 of those 2,800 schools have an acceptance rate of 30% or lower, right? And so the vast majority of schools are, relatively quote unquote easy to get in, or like if you're a solid student and you've done a pretty good job in high school, you absolutely have a place. There's no worry about getting into school. Schools are businesses, colleges are businesses. Some of them are really hurting, especially some of the lesser known schools. Obviously, you still need to work hard, but some schools that aren't particularly well known might be the perfect school for you. And we'll talk a little bit more about fit later, right? There are schools that you might not be familiar with, and so on. And this is why the research process is so important. So 75% of schools have acceptance rates over 50%. Only less than 1%, 0.5% of students actually end up going to the ultra selective schools, the ones with like 10% or lower acceptance rates. Okay, so if you're in the 99.5%, that is okay. That is a normal place to be. That is totally fine. And obviously the competition for those very limited spots is extremely intense. And then lots of people, 73% of college students are enrolled at public institutions, right? So the university, UMass, Boston, UMass Amherst, and all of those other ones, and all the other great public universities across the country. All right, so next, moving into the second thing, control what you can control, right? This is one of these Stoic principles, right? The chief thing in life is to figure out things within your sphere of influence, things that you have some control over, and only focus on those. So what do you have control over? What are the independent variables that you have as a student? All right, so one is the academics, of course, right? This is where the focus is almost exclusively for many parents, especially many Muslim parents. Like, this column is like king, and that's the only thing they talk about, and so on. But nevertheless, it is probably the single most important aspect of college. Ultimately, they are academic institutions. So that involves obviously your GPA, right? But what's also important with your GPA is the rigor of your courses. So if your school offers AP classes, did you take advantage of that? How many of them did you take? You don't need to take every AP that they offer. You don't need to take 6 or 8 APs. I heard someone who was taking 8 APs their senior year, 5 in school and then 3 on their own. I was like, that's not necessary, right? Nevertheless, if you didn't take any APs and your school offered them, you probably wouldn't be a competitive candidate at a top school. If you have IBs or dual enrollment or other ways to take those high level classes, that's great as well. Your class rank. Some school, we don't report class rank at Al Noor because our classes are so small, but for bigger public schools, they do tend to report class rank, and that is an important metric, right? That'll that can be determinative. SAT scores, obviously, inshallah, I'm sure there will be questions in the Q&A. There always are about the SAT, and I don't want to get too bogged down now, but obviously the world of the SAT is sort of has changed. A lot of schools have become test optional, but that's had different impact, but no doubt strong SAT scores are still very helpful. It's just that if you don't do as well in the SAT, it doesn't always hurt you as much as it used to. Alhamdulillah, that's a good change. And then obviously where you apply, and we'll talk more about that later. Other things, the other things that you have some control over: the counselor letter and the teacher letters of recommendation, right? Those are incredibly important documents in this whole process. Okay, so your counselor, which is my role at Al Noor, and your teacher, usually you have at least one, maybe two different teachers. What they say about you carries a lot of weight, right? And you have control over that because obviously the way you treat people and the way you are at school, but also how much you help them write you a good letter. So I have my students fill in this brag sheet. It takes them quite a long time. It probably takes them 3 or 4 hours to do the whole thing, but I have all this data to write about, and I can write them a really nice letter that I think does help them a lot. Get involved with your school, add value to the school, your character, your optimism. People don't like to be around pessimists or people who are always complaining, right? So when you're optimistic about things, that makes a big difference. You can stand out from the crowd, look like that purple cow that Seth Godin talks about, right? People like to just follow the crowd and do what everyone else is doing. When you are totally different and you look different from everyone else, that helps you stand out, right? The colleges are looking for self-directed, risk-taking learners. I took that directly from an admissions person who said, that's exactly what we're looking for when we look at a file, right? People who are self-motivated, self-directed, and then they take risks, right? They risk even failing sometimes. It's also really important that that the students are the drivers of this process, right? It's just like when your kids finally get their driver's license, right? You have to, the role of the parent changes. You've been driving them around for all these years. Now you need to switch over into the passenger seat, right? No one can care about the student's college applications more than the student. And when the parents are putting all the pressure on the kids, right, it doesn't lead to the best outcomes, really. So parents need to be there, be a support, be hopefully someone they can talk to, but the students need to take charge of this whole process. Find your why. Where does your fire come from? How can you serve the ummah? And intellectual curiosity, that's another one of the most important things that colleges are looking for. And then finally, obviously, what you still have the most control over is your application, right? Your activities list and your personal statement, right? We just did a whole class on writing personal statements. Not waiting until the last minute, right? I've had students who miss the deadline because they don't get ready to upload until 11:57 on the day of the deadline, and then they end up missing the deadline. And then your supplements, and we're going to talk a lot about supplements here. All right. Then there are factors that you can't control, right? Things that are outside of your control. Whether you are a full pay candidate, right? It's an unfortunate reality that at most schools, although not the very, very top schools, which are need blind, most schools are what they call need aware, which means that they are aware whether you need financial aid or not, right? So the top schools, the Ivies and quite a few other schools are need blind. They don't consider whether you need financial aid or not when they're making their decisions, alhamdulillah. But most of the schools in the country, the vast majority, are need aware. And so when you are a full pay candidate who's able to pay the crazy application fee, tuitions, it does give you a boost. That's not something you as a student have any control over. So it's something you should not fixate on. You can't control who reads your application or what mood they are in that day when they spend their 10 minutes with you and your file. You can't control what the college's institutional priorities are that year. And that's something I'm gonna explain in the next slide. And of course, you can't control the college's ultimate decision, right? So focus on what you can control. All right. Did I miss anything, Dina? Doing okay? I know I'm trying to get through them quickly.
Yeah, you're covering everything. I'll interrupt if you're.
All right, I see some questions coming in the chat. Definitely keep them coming. All right, The next thing you should do, the next tip to help get into the top college is understand it from their perspective, right? You have to get into their shoes. You have to understand how the whole admissions process works. You need to know, quote unquote, how the sausage is made, right? And this, all that I'm going to say in this next section applies to these highly rejective schools, the schools that get way more applications than they can accept, that have these acceptance rates and 20% or lower. This is how it works. At less selective schools, at schools with much higher admissions rates, the admissions process is generally much chiller, right? And they don't go into nearly as much depth. It's not this sort of cutthroat type situation. But most people, who are here maybe are interested in these kinds of schools. All right, so let's give like an overview of what it looks like. This is a fictitious university, Ford Sand. So they get the applications, right? They have 11,600 applications. They're ultimately trying to get to, they're going to admit 770 of those students, and they have 17 people working on this, both admissions officers and part-time workers, right? And they go through this timeline, which I'll discuss on the next slide, right? So that one's a little hard to read, but so this is the admissions decision timeline. So in January, what happens, that's called sorting. That's when the admissions officers are assigned by their geographic territory. So that's how it works. There's an admissions officer for where you live, right? So if you're applying from Massachusetts, or actually if you're applying to a school in New England, it might be even more specific, like Southeastern Mass or Western Mass and so on. They might have different admissions officers, right? But that's sort of they're reading applications from people who live near you, right? Which is one of the reasons why it's really helpful when you apply to schools that are not close to you, right? When you use this geography to your advantage. I think we talk about that a little later. So they'll roughly get each of those.
Refresh the presentation.
What's that?
You can refresh the presentation. So
okay, it's okay.
There are other
so
later too. So if you just refresh it now, it'll like all be updated.
Okay. I'll do that in a moment. But there are roughly 800 files that each admissions officer gets, and they get it in something called Slate. So this is a software that comes in, and it's not just your application file, it's the school report that gets sent, but it's also all the data. Most of these colleges have been sending you emails, and they're checking to see whether you've actually opened their emails. They're checking to see whether you came to campus for an admissions interview. Not all colleges do this, but many colleges track what's called demonstrated interest, and all that information, your whole digital profile that they have about you is in that Slate system that they're looking through. Then they begin reading. Okay, so this is a crazy time in the life of an admissions officer. They're reading 60 to 70 files a day, right? So if you do the math and you think of how much they have to get through, right? If they're working, I don't know, 8 hours a day, right? And you're doing all these files. I don't know, Dina, you're the math person. How many files per hour is that? Or
wait, 8 hours, 70 files per day.
Or let's do 60, easier math, even for an MIT person.
Hold on. Well, it's not a multiple of 8. So
maybe someone in the chat can do it.
Well, I mean, it's just division, but like, when you're asked to do something really simple on the spot, that's when
well,
it goes down. All right. Well, 60 divided by 8 is like 7.5.
No. Yeah. Anyway, the point is admissions officers have about 10 minutes per file, okay? 5 to 10 minutes, maybe a little bit more, at least for the initial screening.
40 and 80. So yeah, it's 7.5.
Okay. So fine. So ultimately what they're doing during this reading time is they're trying to decide one of 3 decisions. Are they going to recommend that you get admitted, that you get denied, you get rejected, or waitlisted? If you get denied, you have not made it through this level of screening. Probably no one's ever going to look at your application again. You just are, you're not going to go on. If you get into the admit or the wait list, then you get to the next level, right? Typically, there are two readers. They call it committee-based evaluation. One of the readers is more the driver, and the other person is the passenger. So the driver is the one who really understands the different schools in the area and so on. And the passenger is the one who's sort of like the color commentator, who's like looking for, specific things, trying to pull out like really individual details from the different applications. But most schools try to have two readers to give you more of a fair chance and so on. After they've gone through that initial screening, right, which is like an incredibly time-intensive process, right, then they have to prep them. So first they look at, okay, so we had 800 applicants and we recommended, 300 admits. There's no way that's going to actually happen. So, and we admitted like, 75% of our admits are male. Right. And so they'll see obvious imbalances and they'll have to fix it. So a lot of people who are on the admit thing might get pushed over the wait list. There might be people who are waitlisted who are like, actually, that profile looks pretty good. Right. Eventually, they write up these short things which are called like sound bites or preps about the individual students, just like notes that they're going to have about the students, highlighting the very specific features, trying to boil all of what they're about into a short thing that they can later present at the committee, right? So then finally, in February, March, the full committee meets. So up till now, it's been the admissions readers who tend to be relatively young, usually recent graduates of the school, or part-time people who are just picking up work, at that time of year. But this is the full committee has all the, the head of admissions and the executive level, and that's where the decisions get made. So essentially the way it works is the admissions officers bring their files and they advocate for the students and they advocate for their decision, why it was admit or wait list. And then the directors will sign off on. They might ask some questions, but for the most part, they'll sign off on the decisions and so on. But then they have to look at the overall class that they have, right? And this is where this whole institutional priorities comes in, right? So the class most likely will still be too large. They're admitting too many people, and it still has imbalances. They didn't admit anyone, for who's going to study oceanography, and they have a professor there that wants to do that, and so they'll have imbalances in certain areas, and so then some students who made it through all these rounds get shaped out, right? They are good enough for the school, but they don't fit the shape of the class that they're trying to create that year, right? And so that's sort of how it all looks and why it's so confusing. The other thing that admissions officers are thinking about a lot is yield, right? So the yield is the number of students who you accept. You accept a certain number of students. So if you accept 100 students and 80% of them enroll, you have an 80% yield. That's like Harvard, right? Harvard has the highest yield as far as I know, and I'm sure Stanford and MIT and a couple of Princeton probably have similar yield numbers like that. So in other words, almost everyone they accepts their offer, right? Whereas for other schools, it's a big question, like the reason they have a wait list is to do this yield management, right? That historically, for a great school like UCLA, right? UCLA is one of the best UC schools. People want to go there. USC is on there, and so on. They have a yield of 35%, which means that only a third of the people who get into UCLA actually attend there, right? But so the admissions officers are trying to speculate. What they don't want to have is they don't want to have if too many people accept their offers, they don't have enough beds for them, and then that causes serious problems, right? So it's a difficult process. That's why they use the wait list. Some years they dip into the wait list very heavily. Some years more people accept the offers than they expected, and they don't touch the wait list at all, right? So it's a big numbers game for them. And it's also why they pay attention to things like demonstrated interest, because they want, if they see that you've opened every single email and you went on a tour and you you ask questions during your during the tour and so on, they're going to see that you are really interested, and there's a very good chance that they might you might accept the offer. All right. Anything there, Dina, in this whole section?
I mean, I guess I could add a bit about like how a student should demonstrate interest, especially those that are earlier. And in the meantime, you can like refresh the slides. So I think like, other than like opening emails, which I imagine is one of the things that's a little bit less tracked, there are definitely like people that you can talk to at a school, like, you know, even like going, visiting, scheduling a tour. When you we have a section later where we'll talk about like writing essays where you express interest in the school and like explain why you want to go there. Like knowing information, having done your research, having like emailed someone. Some schools also have like kind of material that they put out for people to get information. And so like MIT has like MIT admissions blogs, and and many schools also have like some form of information about like the student experience, and they interface with high school students. Many schools also have like programs specifically for high schoolers. And so if you go to a university's summer program, you know, that shows you're obviously interested. And then for those of you who are younger, one of the really big things that you can do to demonstrate interest in a school is to apply early, especially for colleges that have either restrictive early action or early decision, because, you know, then they know that they really are your favorite school. So for our non-seniors thinking about where they're going to apply next year or in future years, that's one of the biggest ways to show that a school really is your favorite.
MashaAllah. Beautiful. All right, we have 2 more points. So understanding institutional priorities. So this is probably one of the most eye-opening things that I learned when I got into this whole admissions business. This is something I did not understand as a student, and it really has helped me understand it better, and also to counsel students and make them feel a little bit better about how things turn out and so on. So institutional priorities, like, you have to think of admissions officers as architects. They're trying to build an overall class, right? They've been given certain mandates from the higher wigs, from the board of trustees and the president of the school and so on, about, you know, components that they want in their class. And they need to make sure that all of the things that they offer have people who are subscribed to it. So if, for example, you know, they didn't admit any swimmers that year and they have a swim team, then, you know, the swim coach would be out of a job and so on, right? So, you know, so obviously, you know, they need to have things. The reality of institutional priorities is some years you are a striker and the goalie just graduated, right? So they have a full crop of strikers and you know, those types of soccer players, but they need to admit some goalies, right? So that's not something you can control. Like if you're playing, you know, varsity soccer, you've been doing this for a long time, you can't change your position. You know, at this point, you won't know with your dream school and what it is, but that's the reality, and that obviously applies to lots of different things, right? Like you know, you might play a particular instrument, you know, you might play the cello, but they need someone who plays bassoon or something like that, you know. So because of these institutional priorities, because you know, every school is looking for different things, and during that shaping process, this is one of the main reasons why it's so unpredictable, right? Why, you know, one of the main reasons why, if you are aiming high, you probably are going to have to apply to quite a few schools, right? And one of the reasons why you really shouldn't take admissions decisions personally. You will never really know. People always speculate about why they didn't get in. Oh, if my SAT score had been 20 points higher, if this or that. right? You really, really don't know unless you were in that room, unless you heard that discussion, right? And, you know, who knows whether you got through and then you were shaped out or something like that. You know, it's just, it's a difficult process, but hopefully that takes some pressure off of yourself, right? College decisions are not a judgment on your character and who you are as a person, right? Like I try to get that message through to the students. Like if there's nothing else, like these things are, you know, yeah, it's anyway. What are some common institutional priorities? So they need recruited athletes. Now, most schools, athletic recruiting is a whole different topic. And you know, if you're a superstar athlete, you will probably know something about that, and so on. There's another group of legacies, right? So if your parent attended that college, sometimes it's the undergraduate only if they went there for undergrad. Some colleges look at you know, where your parents went for graduate school as well. Sometimes they look at your siblings as well, if your siblings have gone to that school, if there's a family tradition of going to that school. Obviously, that's something that's in the news a lot now. They got rid of affirmative action, but they haven't gotten rid of legacy admissions. It doesn't really seem fair. I would agree with that criticism, but for now, legacies still do hold a lot of weight. I benefited from legacies. My father went to Harvard, my stepfather went to Harvard, my grandfather went to Harvard. There's a big family tradition there, and you know, I'm sure that played a factor in that smoky room where the decision was ultimately made. Your development potential, which is a fancy way of saying like if you might be giving them a library, right? Like if you're a potential donor, if you have a lot of money, that is something that they take into consideration. They have these partnerships with things like Questbridge and so on, and they have spaces set aside for them. They need artists, they need musicians, they need thespians and dancers. So they need all these people for all the different arts programs that they have. Geographic diversity, that's a huge one, right? So when you only apply to schools that are close to you, you're not getting the benefit of, you know, the geographic diversity. If you're from New England and you apply to a school in the South, right, you are going to stand out from that crowd. Similarly, if someone from Alaska applies to a school in New England, right, you can imagine, hey, we want someone from Alaska here. We don't have a lot of applicants. They're going to look more carefully at you. Okay, gender can play a role. Diversity is a huge one. Now, affirmative action obviously is no longer you know, something that is allowed, but still colleges are very committed to having a diverse class, and obviously they want to have Muslims on campus, right? Some colleges, I was at a college last year, and the admission or the Muslim chaplain said that admissions had told them one of their goals was to triple the population, the Muslim population at the school over the next 5 years, right? So that's something that they're actually thinking about and doing. I can't say that's true for every single school, but there are some. And then undersubscribed academic interests, right? So if you're interested in something that's a little bit unusual, that there aren't that many people coming through, you know, who are interested in that thing, if you don't look like, you know, all the different people who, you know, the common majors, computer science and engineering and medicine, pre-med, you know, you have some sort of less common interest that also you know, can help. So how does this impact your strategy? You should definitely celebrate your diversity. Don't be afraid to talk about your dean. Don't be afraid to talk about your ethnicity and so on. And if it applies to you, you might consider something like Questbridge, right? And maybe people have questions about that, but that's a particular program for low-income people, and there's a college matching program and so on. You should leverage your geography. If you're comfortable as a family with you know, going to school where you're going to be living on campus, living in the dorms, being in another state and so on, then that can definitely act to your advantage. Now, I have lots of thoughts about that, which maybe we can talk about in the Q&A, whether that's the right decision. Having an uncommon major, I told you in the beginning, I majored in Near Eastern languages and civilizations. That is not a very common major at Harvard, and so who knows if that played a role in things. Your gender, okay, so there, in general, stereotypically speaking, there are fewer girls interested in STEM and there are fewer boys interested in liberal arts, right? So this is something that can actually benefit. And then obviously we have the tradition, like Imam Ghazali, right? He had mastered philosophy, right, and all these Greek sciences and quote unquote Western sciences, right, and then he learned them better than they knew it themselves, and he merged his knowledge of the Dina and all these different things. He was, he's a true Renaissance man way before the Renaissance. So for example, if you are really into computer science and simultaneously you're really into the classics, so you're into philosophy or you're into Latin and Greek, right? That's a really interesting combination, right? I see you smiling, Dina.
I mean, I majored in computer science and minored in philosophy, so
Okay.
like,
Mashallah. Perfect example. Build a great college list, okay? Opportunity volume and batting average. As we said, you don't have control over a lot of these variables. If you're aiming high with college, for better or worse, you probably need to apply to quite a few schools. Okay. People these days, like when I applied to college, I applied to 6 schools. Right now, people are applying to 10 to 15, even 20 schools. Right now, that's something that you should really talk about with your parents and the counselor and so on, to figure out the exact number. Right. But if you are aiming high, don't get your heart set on just one school. You probably have to, your batting average, obviously the more pitches you see, the better chance it's going to go up. Focus on fit. Really do your research about these schools, right? Obviously there's a lot of online resources, but there's something called the FISC guide. I can't see whether the camera's showing it, but this is a good actual resource. You can go through this and then highlight old school, with stickies and things, interesting colleges. Because I guarantee you there are 2,800 colleges, as I said. There are a lot of great colleges that you've never heard of. Do your homework, do your research. These days, because of schools going test optional, lots of people, the number of applications has just risen, like in so much. Like they've doubled the number of applications at many of these prestigious schools, and one of the reasons is because people now shotgun, right? They know that it's sort of a crapshoot what's going to actually happen, so they end up just applying to so many different schools, hoping that one of those pellets will hit like a shotgun. And so what does this cause, right? What does this mean? It means that you are going to be overloaded with supplements, right? And this is really where this whole thing has been building towards. So supplements are college specific questions at selective colleges, right? So if you applied early, which I'm sure some of the seniors here probably applied early, then you've already done your personal statement and you probably did supplements maybe for your top choice school. But when you apply early, you're probably applying ED, right? You can only ED to one school, so probably you've only applied to your top choice school. And there's probably a lot of other things. So these questions are not very common at the less selective schools, but the more selective schools, they already were common, and now there are even more of them this year, right? Because after the affirmative action sort of fell by the wayside, one of the ways that colleges have responded is by adding questions, asking students about their diversity and other ways to try to get at the thing. So this is the supplements are what colleges use to determine those things that we've been talking about, to figure out your diversity, to figure out whether you are a fit for that particular campus culture and whether you align with their mission and so on. They use it to figure out their yield, right? Because when you're writing a supplement that's just for one school, right, they can tell how much effort you put into that. Right? If you have a very quick, like, very boring, not very well thought out answer, they'll assume that you're not very serious about the school, even if you have a very strong academic record, and they'll likely waitlist or deny you. Right? This is also how they figure out their institutional priorities, where you fit. You'll be talking about your extracurriculars and so on, and they're like, oh, that's exactly what we need. We need this person. Supplements tend to be more authentic because they're less workshopped, right? A lot of people spend a lot of time on their personal statements, right? They go through them in huge depth, but these ones are more authentic and so on. Here are just some sample supplements. Maybe because in the interest of time, maybe we won't read all of them, but a couple of them. Dartmouth says, be yourself. Oscar Wilde advised, everyone else is taken. Introduce yourself. So that's a 250-word supplement where you just have to introduce yourself, right? That's a very specific wording, but you'll have probably a question like that. If you jump down to Tufts, please complete the following statement. I am applying to Tufts because the why us, why be you, why Brown, almost every school has some version of that question, and those are really important. That's where they're really figuring out whether you've done your homework and so on, right? So those are just some examples of supplements. Then I think I'm gonna skip this one just in the interest of time. Then you have the sort of wacky prompts or the quirky prompts. Hey, what was your favorite thing about last Tuesday in 25 words or less? Okay, pretty interesting but tricky question. Which Ben and Jerry's ice cream flavor, real or imagined, best describes you? Answer in 50 words or less. Marvel or DC, Pepsi or Coke, Instagram or TikTok. What's your favorite this or that, and which side do you choose? In 50 words or less. And then the most famous for the quirky prompts is the University of Chicago. So one of theirs is, so where is Waldo really? And one of their features is they don't have a word limit. I've seen people write 1,500-word essays on some of their prompts. Probably that's not advised. I'd say 500 to 650 would be a good number. But this is where we get to the live demonstration part of this. So Dina is famous. If you came to the earlier webinar, she wrote that pizza essay, which I think a lot of people really appreciated. And we did a whole webinar where we looked at Dina's specific supplements, which there's a link included to that for MIT. And I really think, mashallah, having done this for a long time, her supplements were some of the best I've ever seen, and it's something that comes naturally to her, mashallah. So she has volunteered. I would never want to do this myself, and I'm a little nervous about how this is going to happen and work, but she has volunteered to answer live one of the University of Chicago prompts. Okay, so the way this is going to work, I'm going to open this website. And the University of Chicago is famous. Every year they put out 6 prompts, 6 brand new prompts written by their own students. And then you can also answer from their archives, right? So this year, things like exponents and square roots, pencils and erasers, beta decay and electron capture. Name 2 things that undo each other and explain why both are necessary, right? So that's this year, but also they have these classic ones, okay? So Abdurrahman raised his hand a long time ago, so I'm gonna let him. Oh, he just put his hand down, I think. He got scared. Okay, how about in the chat, just so you know this is not rehearsed or anything. Dina's gonna do this live. Yes, Aisha, is there a question that you want Dina to answer live? All right. I don't know how to. Oh, allow to talk. Yes, Aisha. You're muted. You can unmute yourself. If you want. Anyone else? I don't know if you're able to speak, Aisha. Or we could just do it in the, you want to put it in the chat? If there's a question. Are you able to use the chat? I haven't seen
the Q&A.
Okay, Q&A. Anyone? All right, I just saw something come in. Find X. Okay.
Okay, so
How would you do that, Dina?
so immediately what comes to mind are the two interpretations. One, find x like as in a math equation, and then the other is like, for some reason I thought of like x marks the spot like on a pirate map. And so I'll do two answers for different like student profiles. Um, if you are a student who, like myself, uh was like interested in a lot of things, uh I would do like I would intentionally ignore the fact that it seems like it's probably about finding x in like a math problem, and uh like interpret it as being about like a pirate map where like x marks the spot, and then talk about the journey uh like through different things to try and find x being like what I want to do with my life, right? And so you start off, and then you go, you have some metaphor about like being on a ship or something, and the ship is the school newspaper, and you go there and you find a note, and it's like, you know, you enjoy the experience but you haven't found x, and so you go, and then you're on some beach digging in the sand, and that is the archaeology club. And you go and you enjoy the experience but you haven't found x, and then you go and you're in some cave, and the cave is like a chemistry lab, and you enjoy the experience but you haven't found x. And so you conclude with something along the lines of like, you know, like that's why I'm trying to go to college, to find x.
MashaAllah. How'd she do? All right, I think we need to do another one.
Okay.
That was great. Excellent, mashallah. I'm so glad that you're doing this and not me. All right. And that's anyone else choose one. I'll just choose a random one. Actually, I was gonna do that, but you just talked about being on a ship, so I don't want to do one of these crazy long ones. All right. Cats have 9 lives. Pac-Man has 3 lives. And radioactive isotypes have half-lives. How many lives does something else, conceptual or actual, have, and why?
um
Give her the Jeopardy thinking music.
how many lives does something else have? I think this one would be really interesting for somebody, especially given the new emphasis on like diversity through writing as opposed to through direct affirmative action, to write about like them having multiple lives in different spaces. And so you could talk about like how maybe at your job you have one life and you like use a different voice and you never speak Arabic, and at the masjid you have a life and you dress more modestly there and you use different language, and at home you have one life and you like, I don't know, eat spicier food, and you you know, like wear different kinds of clothing than you wear outside in front of like other Americans. And so however many lives you think that like your life breaks down into, you can talk about someone with your identity as having those lives. And if you wanted, you could probably do that through a metaphor about like some character that has multiple identities, but that one you just need to be careful about the execution to make sure it doesn't come off as cliche. But I think connecting it to something else that has multiple identities is how I would do it.
Nice. Maybe we can do one more. There was a question: is there enough space for all these metaphors, etc., within a 200, 350 word limit?
Yeah, it only needs very few words to like set the scene. Like, I mean, the pizza one that you wrote, or there like that you showed them before, was I think like even shorter than that. Like I think it was like less than 200 words.
The pizza essay, for people who weren't there, was if you could teach any class in college, what would you teach? And your essay was a class about pizza. And then yeah, you went on from there. All right, let's do one last one. Ooh, this one's close to my heart. What's so odd about odd numbers?
Oh, I like odd numbers. Okay, so this one I would I mean, again, each essay, obviously, I'm answering from the perspective of a student who I think would have a cool answer to this essay, but anyone can have a cool answer to any essay. I just won't be able to know all of them on the spot. This one would be good for a student who felt like they didn't fit in. So a person could say, like, what's odd about odd numbers is that when you have an odd number of something, you can pair them up and you'll make a bunch of pairs, but there's always an odd one out. And I was the odd one out. And then you can talk about how, you were not able to find your niche or your spot or your people or your community, depending on what was the way in which you felt left out. So maybe you were the only Muslim in your school and that's why you were the odd one out. Or maybe you were considered to be a nerd in your school and that's why you were the odd one out. But I think you would open with something about how you were the odd one out in where you were, and then I would connect that back to something about how another thing that's odd is that if everyone's odd, no one is odd, and so you want to go to the school that collects all the odd people and groups them together, and that will demonstrate your curiosity and your need and your desire to be in that big diverse environment.
Mashallah. Yeah, I was just thinking with this one, I'm actually obsessed with odd numbers. I early on when I first became Muslim, someone taught me that hadith, Inna Allaha witr yuhibbul witr, that Allah is odd, in other words, that He is one, and He loves the odd thing. So actually, I have an obsession with odd numbers. I only set my alarm to 5:23. I would never do something at 5:30 and so on. And actually, I have this irrational hatred of even numbers, which I don't know if that's really what's supposed to happen, but I think I could actually write a pretty interesting essay about that, and it reveals something interesting about Islam, and it's sort of talking about Tawheed in a college essay. So anyway, that was a little flavor of Dina. I like to call her the supplement queen because mashallah, she's able to come up with really, good ideas and so on, very quickly. And that's why she's mashallah such a great teacher and was our first hire at this 5 before college. All right, so we're almost done. I know it's getting we're getting close to what I said was the time. The early deadline versus the regular deadline. So the early deadline, which I'm sure was very stressful for seniors or if you've had older siblings go through it, is stressful, right? But it's like a garden variety storm. It's like a storm, but it's not that bad. If that's true, the regular deadline, if you're aiming high, is like a Category 5 hurricane, right? Because again, for early, you probably didn't have to do too many supplements, right? Most of the schools, with ED being or restrictive early action being the only option at those top schools, you could probably only apply to one or two of them, and you probably didn't have a lot of supplements to do. Now, if you're applying to, so many schools, right, you're going to have just a huge number of supplements, right? I put this together and this blew my mind. So if you were someone who decided to apply to these 10 schools, right? And I'm sure there's been someone who's actually done this, right? This is the number of supplements that you have and the word count for those, right? So 55 supplements you'd have to write, 12,063 words. I mean, when I assign one essay to a student, they freak out about it. You just had to write your personal essay, one 650-word essay, and people lost their mind about it. Now you have to write 55 essays and write 12,000 words. I think that's a pretty it sounds pretty overwhelming. Now, obviously, there is overlap with these essays. You're going to have to write an extracurricular essay, and at one school, it's going to be 400 words. At one school, it's going to be 250. And one school, it's 100. So you'll have different versions of the same essay. So you don't necessarily need to write 12,000 brand new words for every school, but it is an enormous task. And it's definitely not something you want to do over winter break, which is what I did. When I was applying to school, like I said, I only applied to 6, and I'd applied to Harvard early. But I remember obsessing about the Stanford supplements in particular. One of them was about like introduce yourself to your roommate. And I was sort of messy in high school, and so I had this like very elaborate thing about like how I take great pleasure in keeping my room messy, and like it had like pizza boxes open and socks thrown over the place. This doesn't really make me sound good. My wife is on this call, so she can confirm, hopefully, that I'm not that bad, but I'm probably not perfect either. I hear my kids yelling in the background, so I'm gonna move on. All right, so one of the reasons, so there's this pain, right? There's this problem that students face, and I see it every single year, having done this for a long, long time, that they have an enormous amount of supplements to do. They wait till the last second, and then they get overwhelmed. They end up having to take schools off their list. They end up sending applications that are not really ready for prime time, and so on. And so we have come up with this supplements masterclass. And I'm going to turn it over to Dina, because she is going to be teaching this class. As I said, she is the queen of supplements, and I want her. She's the one who sort of designed this whole thing, and I want her to take the lead here.
Thank you. That's very generous. Okay, so I'm very excited to teach this class, alhamdulillah. I think that supplements, as we've mentioned before, especially for students who are applying to a large number of colleges, and especially students applying to more competitive colleges, they're a huge task that is largely forgotten about, and it creates such a big stressor. It is a stress that I remember, and I struggled with a lot. And so I would love to make that easier for other people and help people learn what kind of things work and don't work in supplements. So one of the things that is super important for me in anything that has to do with writing is receiving feedback. So the structure of this class is that it's going to be a workshop class. So it is for 5 weeks from November 20th until December 21st. So just before the winter break that we're going to give back to you when you're done, inshallah. And we meet for class and workshopping every Monday. And then there are additional bonus like sessions and meetings that are available on Thursdays for students who are interested in that.
Should I go to the next slide?
I'll explain a little bit more. But in those classes, we have like about half the class dedicated to learning, like reading and editing example essays, learning like strategies that work, understanding how to brainstorm, how to choose an idea, how to go about this process, and how to get so many essays done in a relatively short amount of time. And then the second half of every class is dedicated to workshopping. So about 3 students per week would be the focus of the class, and we would read some of their work and get feedback from me and from a few of your classmates. So we hope that combination of instruction and like real life personalized feedback is a big help to students, and that they're able to really make progress and like take this big huge pile of work and shrink it down a little bit. So if you go to the next slide, there are 3 different ways to succeed in this program. We have a basic plan where students attend weekly classes and have the small group workshopping that I mentioned earlier. And for the first 10 students who sign up, they will also receive accountability check-ins where they make a plan for how many supplements they want to finish over a certain amount of time, and they are held accountable with intermediate deadlines so that they don't let that all pile up to the end. There's also the regular plan, which includes everything that the basic plan has, but also includes a 30-minute one-on-one meeting after the day that you get workshopped, so that we can go over your writing, go over the feedback that you received from me and from your peers, and figure out how we're actually going to improve it moving forward. And then that also includes access to office hours where anybody can stop in and ask questions and benefit from that. And if you sign up, and for the first 10 people who sign up, there's also an extra 1 hour one-on-one meeting. And then finally, we have the premium plan, which includes everything else. And this is for people who are going to be applying to maybe a larger number of hours or want that like more personalized or really one-on-one attention. They would also receive 5 weekly makes it sound like it's 5 times, like 5 a week. It's 5 total meetings with the instructor, like once a week for the 5 weeks, for an hour. And so you get an hour a week of individualized help. And for the first 10 people who sign up, they would also get a bonus hour after the course ends. So if you have any loose ends that you want to figure out before you submit, we would be able to do that, inshallah. And then I just want to highlight what's written on the bottom. We like really our mission is to like, you know, share valuable information and reduce some of the stresses around the college process. So we really want to see Muslims who are able to get into and succeed at you know, the colleges that are a good fit for them. And so we never want finances to be the reason that you don't take one of our classes or reach out for support. And so you can request to take the class on a pay what you can basis by emailing Brother Hamzah at the email shown right there, hamzah@fivebeforecollege.com.
Jazakallah khair. Just a couple things. You know, these in terms of the premium offer, I know when you see a big number like that, it seems a lot. You know, typically what we charge for one-on-one meetings is $150 an hour. So if you were one of those first 10, then you'd be getting 6 hours of one-on-one instruction in addition to all the other stuff that they get. So that's actually 6 times 150. Doing my math right, that's $900, right? So in other words, you know, you could do just those 6, but you'd also, you know, get all the actual instruction and the workshop and the and so on top of it. So essentially, you know, it's definitely you know, a great option. I know when you think about spending $1,000 or however much it seems, these are sort of big numbers and things like that. But if you think about, you know, your overall lifetime earning potential or like a scholarship and so on, right? You know, it can make a dramatic difference in your life. You know, if there's going to be a $200,000 difference in your like lifetime earning from going to one school versus another school, Wallahu alam, how it all works out, then this isn't really a cost, it's an investment. It's an investment in you, an investment in your future. One of the things that's been interesting to me, and since I did this, is that a lot of times students are the ones who really want this, and they're sort of self-funding, and you know, they don't want to ask their parents for help. And I mean, it like brings tears to my eyes to think about that, you know, and that's you know, I think that parents who are able to should really try to step up and be there for their kids during this time. But also, like Dina said, that what's highlighted in orange down there is incredibly important to us. Yes, this is a business. I left my full-time role to start this company, and it's very, you know, obviously it's important, you know, and I think we're adding a lot of value. But at the same time, I know that people's financial situations sometimes don't allow them to do something, and we never want that. And that's why we're committed to the pay what you can model for people who need it.
Someone
Yep.
asked if they can get this slide, so I just wanted to give you an opportunity to mention how the slides will be shared afterward.
Yeah, we're going to share this webinar recording and the slides. Actually, you can pop the link to the slides right in. Yeah.
Okay.
So Dina will put a link to the slides right now in the chat, but also we will send you know, all this stuff out to you by email and so on. And obviously you can take pictures and screenshots and things like that. Okay. You're doing the link thing.
Oh, sorry. I'll put the link in a sec. So
I can start with this. You do the link.
okay. Um,
So essentially, this is just a chart that Dina created to talk about the different features of those different plans. These are just the basic features, right? So the weekly instructional classes, that's Monday, and actually fix anything I say wrong, Dina. Monday from 7 to what was it, 7:30 to 8:30?
from 7
Did
to
we?
9.
What's that? So okay, so 7 to 8 is an instructional period, and then 8 to 9 is the workshop, right? And students are encouraged to attend. They are required to attend the instructional stuff and encouraged to attend the workshop, even if they're not being workshopped that day, because that's where you learn so much about how it all works, right? And so that's included for all the levels. Then the small group workshop, that's what I was just talking, the 8 to 9 time. The 30 minutes, you were saying, Dina, that this happens after so they get workshopped on Monday, and then on Thursday they meet with you to talk about those essays and to look at the revisions they maybe made based on the feedback.
Yeah.
And the office hours, can you tell us more about office hours?
Oh, yeah, so office hours are just an hour every week where I have an open virtual office through Zoom that anyone can come into to ask questions and ask for feedback on work that they've done and come with sort of any kind of questions or concerns.
And then the premium also has that weekly 1 hour one-on-one with the instructor. So that's the 5 hours. There were some webinar bonuses mentioned for the first 10 people who signed up, right? The accountability check-ins and the extra bonus hours. This goes into some more detail. I think we've covered most of that so far. So one thing I wanted to say was that I think this class is obviously aimed at seniors who are going through this process, but I also think juniors and possibly others, but especially juniors, could also really benefit from this, right? Personal statements tend to change a lot over your, senior year and things like that. But even if you don't end up using everything, going through this process and understanding it can make a huge difference when you're applying to college, and having a bunch of writing and having really getting up close and personal with the supplements. The other real benefit of this is, I think, it's the accountability, right? And this is what some of the people in our earlier masterclass talked about and actually recommended to us that we are more strict about, that you have to really set deadlines for yourself, right? If you have to write 55 essays, hopefully it won't have to be that many, but it might be 30 essays, right? Then you really need to come up with a plan that on week 1, I'm going to have these done. On week 2, I'm going to have these done. Now, obviously, a plan is only as good as, until you actually implement it. But that's the main idea, that you're not just having the winter break, that just destroys your life, the Category 5 hurricane, to spread this thing out starting November 20th, finishing December 21st. So you're in really great shape, to be able to, to apply when we go forward. All right. I'll turn it back to you, Dina.
Yeah, so like I said, I'm really excited about this class. I hope you guys are very excited about this class. This class is great for juniors and seniors. And the timing of it is especially helpful for seniors because we would be finishing just before the winter break, right before applications are due for this year, inshallah. But it is also, in a lot of ways, just a general writing class for this specific type of writing. So even if you end up changing some of the colleges that you apply to in future years, it's still a great experience to have and a great class to take. So we encourage you guys to sign up today, and anyone who signs up within the first 24 hours, so until about 9 p.m. tomorrow, will receive free written feedback on 3 of their supplements, which is actually like a separate service that we offer and is a very big value as well. So we really encourage that. And there are in the big number of essays that you have, having some extra feedback on a few more of them is going to be real helpful, inshallah. So we're very, very excited to offer that, and we encourage you to scan the QR code here or visit the link that is on screen, which will also be made available after. And
Yeah, let me try to put that in the chat.
well, the chat like doesn't like send to people. Everything, like all our communication is like through the Q&A. Or maybe you can send to people, but I can only send to like hosts and panelists.
Okay. So you weren't able to send the slides either?
I answered the question in the Q&A.
Can you guys give a thumbs up if you're able to see that in the chat that I just posted?
You sent it to hosts and panelists, so like
so no. The answer is no.
no.
All right, there we go. And
yeah, that works.
why is it telling me to where's the okay, anyway. Maybe I should stop sharing.
I think we can just leave that screen up for a little bit while we start doing questions.
Okay. Yep.
Okay.
So let me go back to, I don't know why it's getting so upset with me. I guess I have to sign back in.
Oh yeah, it's because the link that I shared is just view, like is view only. So I think it changed your permissions a little bit.
Okay.
All right.
I just wanna share the slides, you know, because I'm sure, yeah. Copy. Anyone link is viewer, chat, put it there. All right. So again, those will be shared much better with the recording of this and everything. But you know, for those of you who are still here, all right. We now want to just look at there. A lot of questions came in. Obviously, I know we've already taken a lot of time, so you know, if you've gotten what you wanted from this, jazakallah khair. But I would love to answer the questions. I always find the Q&A to be the most interesting, insightful part of the whole time. So I think we'll just start from the top, maybe with the Q&A.
Yeah, there are 2 questions tied for the highest upvotes with like I have them sorted by upvotes.
Oh, okay. You wanna start with those? Okay.
Yeah. Okay. One question is, do summer program participation really help for elite schools and the competitive UC schools? Is it worth the travel, time, and resources? Do you wanna, or should I?
Well, I know you did some of those, and so maybe you could speak to your experience, and I can add on maybe.
Yeah. Okay. So generally, what you do in the summer is important because that is the time that you're in control of. And so that is another way to show what you're really interested. So like if you apply to college saying that you want to be a dentist, but then you spent the summer taking computer science classes, then it looks a little bit confusing. It looks like what you're really interested in is computer science. And so definitely doing something over the summer that is aligned with your interests and demonstrates your ability is really important. In terms of specific summer programs, the like top tier of things that you can do is things that are competitive. So something where you have to apply and it's maybe difficult to get in. Those things are like, they really can make a difference. And those things typically have you know, a very small number of accepted people. Sometimes there are programs that they're typically free, and sometimes they even pay you for your participation if they're like a research program. And those things that are very selective are worth traveling and are worth spending time. Another category of things is things that are less selective. For those, there are usually good local options. So if you want to do something that is on the less selective side, it may not be as much worth the like investment of traveling, but it is still a good way to demonstrate that you really do care about what you say you care about and that you're putting time into it. but it doesn't necessarily serve the purpose of showing that you can get into something selective and that you're among the best people in that group. And then aside from that, there are things that you can do that are not in any sort of official program. A lot of people do some capacity of volunteer work. They take classes. They start something themselves. In earlier summers of college, a lot of people don't do any like academic thing over the summer, but they maybe have some role that they play in their family, or they travel to see their extended family overseas. And those things are all things that you can write about and don't create any issue. But especially as you get closer to senior year, so like your summer between 10th and 11th and your summer between 11th and 12th, you should really try to do something that is in line with what you're interested in. And if possible, try and do something that is more selective. Is that good?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so we will do a webinar, inshallah, on summer programs. So you have to start thinking about summer programs, I would say, in January. And this probably applies, for anyone in high school, freshman, sophomore, junior, senior, especially sophomore and on. There are a lot of great summer programs. Hamzah, I've put together a big list of them. If you're in our WhatsApp group, it's actually in the group description. There's a link to everything. I'll drop the join link for the WhatsApp group. It's a big WhatsApp group of over 900 people, who are all Muslims interested in college and so on. I'm sure some of you are in that group. Okay, what was the next one you wanted to cover, Dina?
What do Islamic universities look for in a student? What should we talk about in our applications? What should we focus on? That was the next most upvoted.
Okay. So I'm not sure what when you say Islamic universities, in terms of within the United States, there is Zaytuna College, which is a really cool, very interesting school run by Sheikh Hamzah Yusuf and Imam Zaid Shakir out in California in the Bay Area. And it has quite a rigorous application process. It's, I think, around a 30% acceptance rate. It's very much in the liberal arts tradition. They're looking for a lot of the same sorts of things that these other schools would be looking for. But obviously also, your Islamic commitment. Then, there are things like American Open Islamic University and other sort of online programs. But most of the Islamic universities that are really Islamic are probably overseas, and the admissions processes there are quite different. Usually, I know from people who have tried to study at Al-Azhar in Egypt and so on, that Arabic is critically important, and typically, you essentially have to go back to high school if your Arabic level is not at the right level before you can actually enroll in the school and so on. Some of them have Quran memorization requirements and things like that. But honestly, I'm not an expert in those overseas universities. And so I hope that I covered the question, inshallah.
A
Yep.
student's participation in this political moment negatively impact their application
Yeah,
process.
I think we talked about that at the very beginning.
Okay, so like nothing else to say on that one?
I mean, yeah, I don't, yeah, unless, do you have anything to add?
I would maybe just advise people to be like intelligent in the type of participation that they use. I think you're like, you should, like in seeking justice and doing what like in doing what is right, like that is something that you should not be afraid of. But many people, because they feel very strongly, can do can do things that are counterproductive, which do not benefit seeking justice but may hurt them. So a student should be careful not to spread misinformation. Make sure that if they're sharing things online, for example, that they fact check them. A student should be careful if they go to a protest or something to like not use inflammatory language and like not be cursing or saying things like that. Because like if you are keeping with Islamic values in the way that you participate in this political moment, then, you know, inshallah, that shouldn't be an issue. And, you know, if you don't give people anything to retaliate like against you for, and you make sure that you are responsible, then you will be okay, inshallah. But it is when people get really fired up that they can make mistakes that you know are bad for both the cause and for themselves.
I saw a question just came in. I guess it didn't get uploaded, so maybe. But anyway, my son is in 11th grade and is already very busy with AP coursework, doing homework till midnight or 1 a.m. daily. How can he spare 2 hours on Monday and Thursdays learning about essays and supplements? Do you have summer sessions? When is the next session after November? All right. Mashallah, I empathize and understand how stressful it is. One of the other classes, inshallah, that we will be rolling out is a study skills class and ways to try to cut down on the amount of work. I know these AP classes are overwhelming, but there are definitely methods and study habits and just routines that you can get into where you're able to work smarter, not harder, and not have to just achieve through elbow grease. To be clear, the only commitment is 1 hour on Monday, if you're in the regular session, or 1 hour on Monday and then a half an hour for the Thursday workshop. So it's not on Thursdays, it's just individual meetings. There's not a class for everyone on Thursdays. It's just for the people who got workshopped earlier. And those also aren't group classes, those are one-on-ones with Dina. So it's not a huge time commitment, in terms of this. In terms of writing the supplements, I mean, typically juniors take a couple of APs. Seniors are often taking like 5 APs, right? So I'm not saying you have to take 5 APs, but that is what ends up happening for a lot of people who are aiming super high. So as busy as they might be right now, they'll probably be even busier at this time next year, right? So, the nice thing about being a junior is you don't necessarily need to get through every single supplement. If you have 30 that you have to write, you could do 15 this year and then take some pressure off for the following year, and so on. Summer sessions, inshallah, yes, we will. I just started this company in the beginning of the summer, and so we didn't really roll things out until late August, as I was planning and getting everything. But now that we're up and running, we will try to do work in the summer. I know that will work for some people. And in terms of after November, like I said, there will be essentially I didn't talk about 5 before college and why it's called that and everything today, but I'm going to be offering classes sort of based on that 5 before 5 hadith. So like youth before old age is looking at academics. So read a book like Atomic Habits and then really talk about how to strengthen academics. And then wealth before poverty, we're going to look at ways to explore your career interests and to figure out ways to get that type of experience as a high school student. Health before sickness, we'll look at sort of mental health things and journaling and other strategies that students can use to really work on that. So essentially there will be a lot of programming that's not like college specific, like about the application process. Obviously this will always be the bread and butter. This is stuff that we'll provide, but I really want to help people in those 5 years before college by really catering to those needs that students are going to have. So inshallah, everything's we're working on everything behind the scenes.
Add to
Yep.
that students can spend a lot of time like building up a very impressive resume, taking their AP classes and doing well in them, but a lot of people fall short in being able to communicate what they actually did during those 4 or 5 years. And so if a person is spending all of the hours, all the spare hours that they have during the week on school, the least that they can do is to take a little bit of time to learn how to communicate the value of what they did, and give the person who's reading their application an understanding of what they spent all of these hours doing, and what results it produced, and what it taught them, and the kind of person that it helped them become. So many people are going to have APs, and so many people are going to have good grades, but it is the people who can really communicate what makes their education and their values special that are going to be the one that get those very limited spots that we discussed earlier. So I think it's a very good time investment to be able to write well about what you've been doing during all these other hours of the day.
Yep. If I could give my thumbs up, I can't figure out how to do it as the host, but I would absolutely say that that's a beautiful answer and 100% agree. When is the best year in high school to do this class? Obviously, if you're a senior, then like you are in the belly of the beast. You know that if you're a senior, again, I want to stress this is really for people applying to highly selective universities, right? Most schools don't have any supplements. I said there are 2,800 schools. Those schools with the 50% or higher acceptance rates, they want to make it as easy and frictionless as possible for you to apply to college, right? So if your academic profile is quite different and you're sort of more of like a B- student, and you haven't been super active in high school, and you're not necessarily aiming for those top schools, the college application process is really not that stressful. You have to write a good personal statement, and you need to do all those other things, but most likely you're probably not going to be aiming for the top schools. It's really the people who really have the background and the profile who want to apply to these schools who this is really relevant for. So in terms of the best year, obviously senior year it's necessary. I really think the more I think about it, I really think juniors could benefit from this class. What's that?
A couple of people are asking if supplements change from year to year. Like if it makes sense to work on them as a junior. So just
yeah,
like
definitely this year there were some shifts. There were some prompts that are added. There are some prompts that never change, like the Y Tufts and the YBU. Like there are some prompts that have been static for a long time. But there will be some changes. And I don't think our promise for juniors is you will be done applying to college by the end, by winter break of your junior year, because that's not realistic. And even the essays that you write, you may have experiences over senior year, and you may have other things that you want to talk about, and so on, but you will have at least a good chunk of the work done. And more than anything, you will have like practiced your writing muscles that can help you with if you add a school to your list or something like that. So I definitely think even just as a writing class, even if this were not related to college, it could be extremely beneficial.
Just to like add, so there are a few things that everyone who is applying ends up having to write about that has supplements. If you usually have to write elaborating on at least one of your activities. You have to write at least one talking about why you want to study the subject you want to study. And then if you have a college that asks the why our school question, you always end up having to write about why you want to go to that school. And you almost always have to write one about a hardship that you went through and how you overcame it. So there are a number of classic supplements that many schools will ask you about, and that you can write in advance. They're definitely going to get used somewhere. And so those are things that you can start in your junior year, and you'll likely use for multiple schools, along with the more future facing benefits that Brother Hamzah mentioned.
Right. I know, I'm thinking of Bowdoin. They have this school quote motto or something, and that essay has been the same at least for the 10 years that I've been here. So There is definitely, you know, a lot of them do stay the same or quite similar and so on. Let's see. So we answered that. Mashallah, these prices are incredibly reasonable for college consultants and essay writing. Hamzah, thank you for saying that. I appreciate that. And like I said, it is, you know, part of our overall mission. So appreciate that. I think we did that one. What are some things I can do to fulfill my potential in the college application process as a 10th grader? Mashallah, love that question. You wanna take a shot at it, Dina? Definitely have thoughts.
Sure. Okay, so study hard and get or maintain good grades. You should probably start studying for, if not start taking the SAT. You should build good relationships with your teachers, especially teachers that you expect to take for multiple classes over future years, because they're going to be able to write you really good rec letters if you start building those relationships early. You should look for a summer program that you can do in the summer between this year and next year. You should start thinking about what you're interested in. And if you have a really strong interest, then you should think about a way to become distinct in that interest. So if there is a science fair or a math competition or a like writing contest that you can enter, you know, or many of them that you can try and enter, doing that, building up that demonstrated practice of your interest and maybe even getting some awards in it are super helpful. And then you know, start like just generally like thinking about overall how you want to like build your application and think about like, what do I have to do to prove it? Like, so like, oh, I say I'm interested in the subject, how do I prove it? And that's like by, you know, joining the clubs or doing competitions or summer programs that are in that subject. I say I'm a good student, how do I prove it? That's by taking more difficult classes if they're available to me and by doing well in those classes. And I say that people like me and I have good values, how do I prove it? That is by building good relationships with the people who are going to write recommendation letters about me and you know, doing work in my community or like, you know, building up that like reputation as a person who has the values that I say I have. So
Right. Mashallah.
generally think about what you want and then start proving it.
Right. I think there, you know, that is, you covered so many of the things. I'd say, you know, one other thing is, you know, follow your curiosity, follow your intellectual curiosity, and try to see, you know, if there's something very, very specific that you know you're really interested in. I was just reading about someone who they were fascinated by ants, so they created a podcast about ants and so on. And like I guarantee you, when they're applying to school, they're going to you know, the person's going to be like the ant podcast guy, right? We have a student, I don't know if she's here or would mind me saying, mashallah, she's very interested in women's reproductive health, and she led a campaign at the school to get a pad dispenser. She raised lots of money and put it in the girls' bathroom because she saw a need in the community that wasn't being addressed, and she took it on herself to solve that need and then to educate the girls in the community about this, right? And that's what her college essay is about. And mashallah, it's you know, she saw something real. And she has a story. She has 22 younger cousins, so she's lived through all sorts of pregnancy and so on. So it's like this, she found her why. So try to find your why and then do something unique. Try to maybe create some sort of digital product or, you know, YouTube channel or something that's uniquely your own. Those are some things. And the other thing I would say is like one of the other than these master classes, the other service that we provide at 5B4 College is one-on-one coaching. So Hamzah, we have clients starting as early as 8th grade, who I typically, with the 8th to 10th graders, I would meet with once a month. And it's sort of like an accountability partner, right? Hamzah, I get to know the students over time. We do different exercises together. I listen to what's going on in their life. But then we come up with a plan for the next month, right? And then they know that they're going to be meeting in a month to check in, and then I'm going to ask them, how you said that you were going to, try out for this orchestra thing or whatever it is. And then you meet with them the next month, and it helps keep them on track, and they get advice. They're looking at summer programs. We talk it through it, and so on. So that's another thing that we do. You can book time with me. You can book time with Dina. And so that's another way that you can do that. I haven't seen. Do you see any more that oh, which is the best college for students that want to get into medical programs?
Medicine and things where you have to go to another school after undergrad are actually great example of a point we made earlier about, not always needing to go to the like highest ranked colleges. So the best schools that you can go to get into med school or general like post grad education are schools where you can do really well and you can build a strong profile. So if you are a student and you get into a top college that is maybe too difficult and wasn't like a strong match for you, and then you are not able to perform well at that college, then when you apply to med school, you are not going to have the academic profile that you need. Whereas if you go to a little bit less of like, less advanced of a college or like less selective of a college, but you have a really strong academic profile, you stand out, you're able to get research opportunities, you're able to win competitions, you're able to, maybe they fund you to travel to conferences or, connect you to really cool, unique volunteer opportunities. That is when you have a really strong profile as an applicant to med school. That's also another place where you can think a lot about the investment you're making in education and where you want to put it. And so you maybe don't want to go to the most expensive school that you get into in undergrad if you are going to also pay for med school afterwards, assuming of course that you don't have the financial aid to make it more affordable for you. So one thing many people also do if they know that they want to go to school after their undergraduate education is to try to choose a more affordable option for those first 4 years so that they can afford to pay for med school without accruing too much debt. So, we talked kind of generally about how you don't always have to go to a top tier school, but I think something like medicine is actually a really good example of why that is the case. So any school where you can do really well and you can build a really strong case for yourself to get in is the best place for you to go.
Yep. It's the whole concept of being a big fish in a small pond, right? It's actually when I went to high school, I had applied to various different schools, and I ended up going to a slightly, I mean, it's still a very good school, mashallah, but it wasn't as, I got into some other schools that were quote unquote higher ranked and so on. And I think going to my high school was actually one of the best decisions because I was able to really stand out there and be one of the top students and so on, and I think that really helped with my profile as I was applying and so on. I think let's just go right from the top. I know that I don't know how to study for the SAT. What should I do? So I'm not sure what grade this student was in. So somewhat maybe grade dependent, but essentially the PSAT is something that's offered that you should definitely try to take both your junior year and then again your sophomore year and then your junior year. And that will give you a lot of data about where you're strong and where you need the most work. You can link your College Board account to the Khan Academy, and you can get free SAT tutoring, free SAT classes. Khan Academy also has this new AI thing called Khan Migo that's really an amazing use of artificial intelligence for, teaching concepts as opposed to just giving you answers. It really asks good questions and makes you show your work and things like that. So mashallah, they're doing some fascinating work. Obviously, another thing you can do is get the official SAT book published by the College Board. and actually do the practice tests, and then check your answers, see which ones you got right, read the wrong, read the explanation, see if you get it. If you still don't get it, then you go and you talk to people. Now obviously there's an industry around SAT prep, and for some people they really need that. They're not going to do it on their own, and they need that accountability, and they need the the instruction that teachers can do. So they have different options for that, between group instruction and so on, and then individual one-on-one tutoring and so on. Yeah. So those are some ideas. There are good resources out there, book resources and human resources, and inshallah. You have any other? Is that good, Dina?
I would say like just do it. I feel like a lot of things like people try and find what is the optimal strategy, but like if you start by watching a YouTube video, if you start by going on Khan Academy, or if you start by taking a practice test, once you start with something, you'll start to identify what concepts are easier or harder for you and where you should be going from there. A lot of resources also naturally link to other resources. So if you're on YouTube, you'll see different recommended different recommended videos, or people will talk about books and websites that they use. Or if you're on Khan Academy, you will find like more paths through there to explore different different subjects and different parts of the test. And so just start somewhere and then put in the work consistently over time, and it won't make a huge difference in the end.
This is a more recent question, so I know that some of the people who asked the earlier ones might not be here. So let's answer this one next. When and how will I know what I want to study in college? This is a great question for Dina, because I don't. Did you ever figure it out? I know you studied something in college, but
yeah. So you definitely don't have to know what you studied in college while you are in high school. You probably don't really have to know what you're going to major in college until like your second or third year of college itself. In the beginning, you take a lot of general classes at most colleges. So you'll be taking some random math class and some random English class, regardless of what you're going to study. And then along with those two classes that you have to take, you can take a class or two of subjects that you suspect you're going to like. And that can help you start to explore. We obviously recommend exploring things earlier than that. And so if you like some of your classes in high school, it's great to look online and see if there are people, if there are people who teach like fun, interesting online courses that are an expansion of that subject. Or even I was kind of before master classes got really big, but I just used to watch YouTubers that were would talk about science, and I wrote about some of the YouTubers that I liked in some of the short questions in my application, and I had it was a very general exploration of my interest. But like Brother Hamzah said, you should follow your curiosity as far as you can. Just keep postponing it until you until you feel really comfortable with something.
People change their major on average 3 times when they're in college. And so some people know from a very early age what they want to do, and Hamza, that's a blessing, honestly. And other people, and I would put myself in this category, didn't necessarily know. I went in. I had become Muslim when I was 15, and I knew I wanted to learn Arabic. That was one thing that I knew. And then, I decided, why don't I learn more about Islam? In retrospect, I wish I made different choices. There are other things that I'm probably even more interested in, linguistics and some or applied linguistics and things like that. But I to some extent I sort of put myself in a box by saying that, and then not really considering changing it, even when it wasn't the most gripping subject for me. So I think I would do things a little bit differently. So that's the one nice thing. There's no thanawi amma that's going to like, sort you from a very early age and put you into one particular track. It's very, very open-ended, and you know, the job that you're eventually going to have probably hasn't been invented. If you look at how quickly AI itself is changing, like just yesterday, OpenAI unveiled this new, crazy thing. Like a lot of the images in this I built with, with the DALI image generator and things like that, and things that you can't even imagine a year ago. And so jobs are changing. So really colleges are teaching you how to think, right? They're arming you with skills and and an ability to problem solve and so on. But what actually you'll do in the real world is probably not going to be that connected to your major and so on. All right. How can I apply for a uni or college with a soccer team player interest, but does high school homeschool and doesn't have proof for the great ability he can offer the team? All right, so
there are like local club soccer teams
yeah,
that you can
if you want to play soccer, so there's different in college. There's different types of sports. There's varsity sports and then there's club sports, right? So varsity sports typically, depending on the college, are recruited athletes, especially in a popular sport like soccer, right? So if you want to be a recruited athlete, then you need to stand out beyond just the Masjid Soccer League or like the pickup soccer type thing, right? You really need to try to get involved in the town soccer, travel soccer team, the different leagues and so on, to be recognized and to be playing in games where coaches and recruiters are going to see you play and so on. That said, there is another way onto a varsity team, which is to be a walk-on, which essentially you arrive the first day and you tell the coach that you wanna play on the team. I think Dina, you had some experience with being a walk-on.
Well, so I tried to be a walk-on unsuccessfully and then I did it successfully. So I actually was also interested in soccer. I tried to walk onto the soccer team. That was how I discovered that you're supposed to be recruited in advance. And so sometimes you like a team does not accept walk-ons because they already accepted recruits and they filled up the team. So that was the situation with me. So I could not be on the soccer team. Uh
But then
then
you were able to get on the fencing team as we shared earlier.
Yeah,
But
so then I reached out to the fencing coach. Fencing is a less common sport, and so they did not accept people until the limits of the team were full. And so that was when like that is more of the kind of situation where there's room for somebody to join if they were not in the recruitment process earlier.
yeah, mashallah. So yes, sports are the other thing is you can play club sports, which are not, which usually are open to everyone. Intramural sports, you're playing, well, club you might be playing against some other teams, and then they have intramural where you're just playing inside of your school, and those are still high level teams and things like that, and very skilled athletes. But Division 1 athletes are on another level, like when
I was on an intramural soccer team too. It's really fun.
Yeah, mashallah.
And so like if you want to use soccer to get into college, you need to be recruited, or any sport to get into college, you need to be recruited. But if you just want to play at your college, then there are many different ways to do that that don't involve recruitment, and you don't have to be on the varsity team.
Yep. Can you talk about senior students new to the US and they're looking for a way to get higher percentage to join the college or uni? So yeah, when a student has come in from overseas in the middle of high school, it is a tricky transition. And essentially, the first thing is just to get your bearings and get grounded here and get up to speed with school and with the American system and so on. I so it's also different, like, what was your education like before that? If you're coming from an American system, like we one of the students at Al Noor, he had been over in the Emirates or somewhere. He'd been going to an American curriculum school. He was able to hit the ground running, and mashallah do very well. He went off to Northeastern, and now he's a very successful entrepreneur and so on. So if you're coming and you're still learning English, you're still working on your English and things like that, then just focus on those things, right? One of the least one of the least expensive ways, and sometimes one of the smartest ways to get a college degree is to start with 2 years at community college. And you do 2 years of community college, and then after that you transfer for the final 2 years to to a 4-year university. And that is often one of the best ways, especially for someone whose academics are still or their English or whatever are still developing, and also is considerably less expensive. Of course, that's sometimes you get full rides and financial aid and things like that, but that is one path you can do.
Yeah, that question really, really, really depends on the details. Like, if you've taken the SAT or the TOEFL or things like that, and if you're ready to apply right away. So that's a situation where I would definitely recommend seeking like one-on-one counseling to figure out in more detail what your options are for your specific case.
All right, how do they get recruited soccer athletes? You wanna?
Yeah, so coaches can have relationships either with a school or with students. And then if it's a school that tends to produce a lot of athletes, sometimes the coach will go to the actual schools to watch the students play. Other times, and it also depends on the sport. Other times, students will reach out to a coach or be contacted by a coach, and then they will attend a camp where they're with other students who are in the process of being recruited, or being potentially recruited, where they will, do various like drills and activities, games of that sport, depending on what sport it is, to demonstrate their ability in front of the coach. There are a lot of different like rules about how people can contact the coach and what sort of contact a coach and a student can have like with one another, when the coach can watch a student play and things like that. So it differs a lot by division and depending on the nature of the school. But if you have a student who is an athlete that is interested in being recruited, the first thing that they should do is like look online for the contact information of the coach and reach out expressing interest, and then they should be able to direct the conversation from there.
I just dropped a link into the chat about applying to college as an athlete, 10 questions to consider, from the college essay guy, who's one of my favorite people in this space. So I think that could be helpful if you want to learn more about it. But also if you're on a very competitive team, the coach of your team will also be familiar with the recruiters and the whole process and so on. And also talking to other students and so on, who have college athletes and whatnot. Do you advise volunteer things better influences than others? So I think it's asking like which types of volunteer activities are the most helpful.
I think the best volunteer options, or activities that you can do, are the ones that are most aligned with your interest. So like if you're interested in medicine, then maybe volunteering at something more medical is a better idea for you. Whereas if someone is interested in education, then volunteering at a school is a better idea for them. So one of the big themes of the application is you want to have some activity that shows that you really are interested in what you say you're interested in. So always looking for volunteer opportunities or things in general that really align with your interests.
Mm-hmm. Yep. And also you're right, and doing things that are, yeah, connected to that might be different than what other people are doing. A lot of people, they travel overseas in the summer, right? They have families back in Morocco or Egypt or wherever they happen to be from. And there are a lot of NGOs and other things back in those countries that you can get involved with, so that you still visit family and do all that thing, but you also do some really beneficial things there as well, that can help. This was from a long time ago, but can you please elaborate on class ranking? So essentially, based on their GPA, typically their weighted GPA. So a weighted GPA takes into consideration the level of the class. So a system that many schools use is like an AP class has a top weight of 5.0, whereas a CP class might have a top weight of 4.0. So in other words, taking the higher level classes, they carry more weight. So typically a school will look at the weighted GPA over the 4 years that you are in high school, and they'll see who has the strongest GPA, and then they typically don't report exact. Some schools do, but typically they do in percentiles. So they'll say like top 5%, top 10%, top 20%, and so on. So that's typically how they report that to colleges. Some schools, like Al Noor, where I am, like this year we have I think 11 students in the graduating class. So if I were to report by percentiles, like the student number 3 or 4 would, who are very, very good students, would not look very good. They'd look in like the, top 40th percentile, isn't like as competitive. So different schools do different things when it comes to reporting class rank. But if a school does report it, it is a factor that they definitely look at. I What else can I add to my essay? Who wants to get the computer science major for any universities? My GPA kind of low, but this December I'm going to get the SAT exam. Dina is our computer science. You're muted.
Sorry. I mean, like, what you can add to your essay specifically is it really depends on what like experiences you've done. So if you're interested in computer science, talking about a project that you did, like if you've I don't know, built like a website or a game, or used computer science to solve a problem in some interesting way, then I think that would be something great to write about. And then if you've done any like hackathons or anything like that, then talking about the project that you did. But to know like specifically what you should include, I would need to hear more about like what you've done.
Mm-hmm. Will you prefer a 7-year program or the regular process for medical students?
If you can get into a 7-year program, then like it will save you a lot of time and money. And at the end of it, you're still a doctor. So like those are something many students apply to, and it's like very very helpful if you get it. They're just more difficult to get into, so you apply to along with other things.
Right. There are lots of different paths that definitely make sense to apply, especially if you're a very strong applicant. But those, understandably, those spots are pretty highly coveted. Medical school applications is a whole nother beast. And really we focus mostly on undergrad. We can certainly help with essays for I've helped with business school essays and other things like that. But in terms of strategy and so on with medical school, it's a really another whole cutthroat industry and so on. And so getting into a 7-year program where you're accepted, you have automatic acceptance if you have maintain a certain GPA and so on, can definitely be very helpful. I don't know if he's still here, but Muhammad Zaki asked a long time ago. He's traveled extensively internationally, and I've asked questions around college admissions of these countries. For the most part, the process is straightforward. Why does the US have the least transparent process compared to all these countries? That's a big question. I think, when we were going through this with institutional priorities and so on, it's complicated. Running a university is just like, it's a very difficult task. And I think American universities are considered to be the top in the world. Even though our actual education system at the K-12 level definitely doesn't have that reputation. And I think it's, some of it has to do with the way this whole process works, that they really do work extremely hard to enroll an interesting dynamic class every year. And if they told you what the institutional priorities were for that year, then everyone would just go to craft their application, to meet that thing. There's something, it's in the alim al-ghaib, right? That you don't necessarily know what they're looking for and so on. So I think I think the system, they tend to enroll pretty good classes. I know I'm really impressed by the types of people I met when I was in college and what they've gone on to do and so on. So, it's definitely not a perfect system. There's a reason that this industry of college consulting exists. But it's not without its pros. All right. I think that's it, unless I don't see any more questions in the chat. I really appreciate the 18 of you who stayed here for almost 2.5 hours. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala reward you. Hopefully that means that you're getting a lot of benefit from it. And we really appreciate that. And we are definitely here for you. So, whether it's this class or whether it's one-on-one counseling or whether it's just attending all the free stuff that we put out, our mailing list and my newsletters and things like that. We love to have you with the 5 Before College team. We really appreciate it. Thank you so much, Dina. Really excited to have you teach this class, and Jazakallah khair, everyone. And inshallah, we will see you all soon. Subhanallah wa bihamdihi, subhanak Allahumma wa bihamdika, ashhadu an la ilaha illa anta, astaghfiruka wa atubu ilayk. Assalamu alaikum, everyone.